So for step 28, checking the RC equipment, this is where we need to make sure that the servo is in neutral before we go ahead and put on all the servo saver pieces. And the only way you can do that is to connect all of the equipment. So we're going to be using our ESC, the receiver, the servo, and our charged battery. Now you can see here, this is the servo that I'm going to be using, a Futaba S148. Now, when this was shipped, it came with a shoehorn and a little screw inside of there. Now in my case, there is the screw that came in the servo. What you're going to need to do is come down here, and it tells you if your servo came with a tapping screw, then you need to look at these two sizes. In my case, it's an MC2, which is that one right there, which is why I only have the one screw shown, because that's the only one that I need. And not only that, but because I'm using Futaba equipment, it's literally saying when you're using the Tamiya Futaba servo saver, which is this piece right here, and you can see on the back side it actually says Futaba Tamiya, you're going to want to use an MC2. So it makes it very easy for me. But depending on the servo that you have, you are going to need to go through this process to determine which screw is going to be needed for your servo. Anyways, I've got all the pieces right there, so I'll set this up and let's make sure the servo's in neutral. So as you can see, I now have everything connected. Here's our Hobbywing speed controller, and here is our servo. Now here is our receiver on off switch, and you can see that the plastic, the white ribbed piece there, is not moving. It's obviously stationary, but when I flick this switch, you're gonna see it do a shimmy. Now if it's well out of alignment, it might do more than that. But if it's not, it's just going to do a little shimmy back and forth, and once it goes back to being stationary, you will then know that this servo is ready to have the servo saver pieces installed. So I'm going to flick this switch right here, and let's see what happens. So you saw that it did a little extra bit of a shimmy just to get itself back in neutral. I've turned this off. I'm going to turn this back on again, and you'll see it do it again. Notice it wasn't as much. So as of right now, this servo is definitely in neutral. I'll do it one more time. So we're set. So as of this moment, we can now install the servo saver pieces, knowing that this is in the correct position. And of course, if for some reason there's final adjustments that need to be done on your transmitter, there are final tuning adjustments for the steering. So we are set. So I'm going to disconnect all of this, and we'll start putting together the servo saver. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get the ball connector onto the servo horn. And you can see that in terms of the positioning, it's going to sit like that, and the ball connector is going to be right there. So I'm going to grab our box wrench again, and we're going to start screwing that in basically from there. That should do it. Yep. So I will screw this down all the way. Pretty much all the way. Yep. So there we go. There is our ball connector in place. And you can see that this piece right here, your P4, is going to be on the servo. And you can see that in terms of this, and do make a point of making sure you do this the right way, is that you can see that the motor is on the right-hand side in the diagram with the wire coming out of the back here. So we need to put it on that way. Now you'll notice that this needs to be facing up and down, and you can even see in this diagram it's got to be vertical. Now you can see that in terms of, see how the ribbing on the backside and this, it's got to match. So knowing that the thing popped itself into neutral, you have a choice. You can either go that way, that's too far over. That way, it's pretty close. Or if I go one more, it wants to sit that way. But notice it's not perfect either way. So if I go one over, it's slightly out. Now that's the one I'm going to choose. So I'm going to push that into place. And you'll notice it's not totally vertical. That's okay. We can do the fine tuning with the transmitter, but we need that as close to it as possible. So that works. So now you can see that the P5 piece is going to fit over top of that. Just like that. After the P5, we're going to put in our P2 piece, and notice that in terms of the positioning, that's got to go up, so it's facing upwards, just like that. And then we have this little P1 piece, and then of course the MC2, at least in my case, is the screw that we're going to use to hold this all in. Now I'm going to use my index finger there to hold it back so that it doesn't move as I'm screwing this in. And it's almost in as right now. Now I'm going to change my positioning so I can hold it better, and I'm going to use my thumb to hold this down. There we go. So there is our servo ready for installing into the car. And again, we're going to be able to make some fine-tune adjustments here, because you can see that this is supposed to be straight up and down. It's not. It's going to need to come over a bit, but that's okay. Once we've hooked everything up, we can use the transmitter to turn it a little bit. And you'll notice that in the transmitter, or on the transmitter, you can see here, there are your throttle and steering controls, so we can make fine-tuning adjustments. And it did show up here that for the servo, you might want to use for servo reversing, go from the normal position for steering and go into the reverse position. Now I didn't do that with the BT-01, so I'm not sure, but if need be, I'll flick that down to reverse, which you can do the same. Anyway, that is where we're at. So step 28 is complete. So we're going to move over to step 29 now and attach the battery holders.